Okay, then let's carry on with the story about the three brothers, part 2, Fergus, Milo and Noah. Many years had passed since that visit into the jungle, and over those many years lots of things had changed their lives. However, as they all agreed, they never ever told anybody about what happened, until they told me just the other day. As I mentioned before, sometimes they would go to the village school. Most times they did not. Any excuse that could be made up by both Noah and Milo, they came up with. Sometimes it was the crops needed watering, or that somebody required help with their fishing. Sometimes they arrived at school, and after the teachers had marked them, they would then sneak out the back door and disappear for the day. They were not naughty or bad, it was just that they had so many other important things to do, and so many villagers to help. People, no matter what their ages, always went to see Milo when they wanted help with their crops, how to grow plants, and advice how to keep food from going bad. He had never read about it, but had learnt about these things as he grew up. Noah was always with the fishermen, helping here and there. He always, nobody knew how, he knew where the best fishing would be on that particular day, and the fishermen took heed of what he said and always trusted his better knowledge and were never let down. Fergus was one who enjoyed school, was always there each and every day, reading, writing, and do whatever he could to learn more about animals. Yes, he still cared and looked after animals, and the people in the village always took their sick animals to him to make them better. As he grew older, he knew that he wanted to do with his life. Milo was happy working the fields, and Noah was always on the river fishing, both of them very happy with their lives. It must be mentioned that as Milo started to grow up, mainly when he started to like girls, he did wash a bit more. Not every day, but at least twice a week, and it was with water. Over the years they had earned a little bit of money, and together they had built a bigger house for themselves. It was no longer made of mud, but of bricks. It had a proper front door and windows, not just old curtains. They each had their own bedroom, while they shared the kitchen and lounge. In fact, it was a very nice little house, the best in the village. On the side of the house they had built a boathouse for Noah to keep his fish bits in, and his boats. At the back of the house they had bought some extra land, and if you could not find Milo in the house or village, you'd find him in his large garden, weeding, sowing, planting, or just sitting and watching the plants grow. On the other side of the house was where Fergus had built a little office and an animal hospital. You go in there most days and you would find all kinds of sick animals, sheep, goats, dogs, cats, birds and snakes. If the animal was sick, Fergus would look after it and loved it until it got better. But Fergus always knew he wanted more. Fergus wanted to go to the big city and work in a proper animal hospital and make a lot of money. One day, he had been putting it off for some time. He called his two brothers to him and told him he was going to leave and find a job in the city. They, of course, were very sad to see him go. It would be the only time in their lives that they had not been together. But they both knew that it was what Fergus wanted, and they should not stop him. After all, he'd never stopped them from doing what they wanted. The word got around the village that he wanted to go to the city and work in a big animal hospital. They found out it was going to cost Fergus a lot of money to train in the hospital, so without him knowing, they raised a sum of money for him. Now, it was not much, as they were all very poor people, but Fergus had helped them all so much over the years with their sick animals that they thought it was the least they could do. On the day that he left, he said goodbye to his brothers and wished them well and started to walk out of the village, only to be stopped by the villagers, who gave him their gift of money. He thanked them most kindly, and with a tear in his eye, walked out of the village and down the road and caught the bus to the big Indian city. He had never been to a city before, and it came as a shock to him how big it was compared to his village. Well, they say time flies past. And the next 7 years, while Fergus was to train to become an animal doctor, he did just like that. All those 7 years while he studied, he never went back to the village. He was far too busy, far too far for him to go, and he couldn't miss his studies. He kept in touch with his brothers, yeah. Okay, firstly by letters, and then, when he could afford it, he bought them both a mobile phone and rang them each week. He managed to get a job in a very famous animal hospital and was paid a lot of money to look after rich people's cats and dogs. Although he liked earning a lot of money, something was missing in his life, but he did not know what. Both his brothers were married now, Milo being the proud father of twin girls, and Noah's wife was expecting their first child. He hadn't even gone back for their weddings. Oh, he was too keen on making money. Maybe that's what he needed, a wife. But he was always working, had no time to go out in the evenings. Noah now had 6 fishing boats with 20 people working with him, fishing every day, and always sounded so happy when he spoke to him. Milo had managed to earn some money and had bought more land, and like Noah had people working for him and was selling plants to all the villages around the area. Fergus, always confused when they both told him they had people working with them as opposed to working for them. Fergus now had a staff of 15 people working for him, but he did not like any of them. He worked, and they worked, and that was it. You earned the money, and it went to the bank. But he was not happy. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, a couple of years had gone by like this, and then on one special day, Fergus received a phone call from his brother Milo. He sounded very upset and worried, and explained over the last few weeks many of the village's animals had been killed by something. The cows and sheep would be found lying on the floor, just dead. A lot of the fish in the river were dead, just floating on the surface, with no reason as to why they had died. Milo pleaded with his brother to come back and help the people in the village. Most of them now had not much to eat, what with their cows and sheep being killed. The fishermen could not catch enough fish for their families to eat, let alone to sell. Milo explained that even his crops and the crops of other farmers had been smashed down. What were they to do? Nobody was helping them, so please come home and help us. Fergus put down the phone and cried. What was he doing here, making money, looking after little rich people's dogs and cats? It did not take long the following morning to go into the animal hospital and tell them that he was leaving for a few weeks and needed to go now. And with that, he walked out and got into his car and started to drive back to his village. Well, it did not take him long to get back, and the villagers and his brothers were so pleased to see him. He met his brother's wives and Milo's twin girls. Oh, everything seemed so right. Once he had unpacked, Milo showed them the beaten crops around the village. Noah took him to the river and showed him the dead fish, and everybody asked him what was causing the trouble. He could see the dead sheep and goats by the side of the pathways. He told everyone he did not know what it was, but would stay with them until this problem had been sorted out. A few days passed by while the 3 brothers walked around the village, visited the other villagers, and tried to make some sort of sense of what was happening. Fergus was worried. So many people were relying on him to solve the problem, but although he felt worried, he also felt happy to be back inside his village. Like he had all those years ago, he called his 2 brothers to a meeting, and they talked late into the night and agreed the only way to find out what was causing the problem was not in the villages but over the other side of the river, and that was where they would have to go. It was agreed that they would tell nobody what they were going to do, and got ready to cross the river and stay over there very next night. Evening came all too quickly, and it was time to leave. They all got into one of Milo's boats and crossed the river and walked into the distance. It was not long before it was too dark to work any further, so they made camp under the tree, not far from the jungle, and sat down and waited. It wasn't long before they heard some noise coming out of the jungle, but whatever it was a long way off, so all they could do was sit and listen. They heard the noise most of the night, but could not work out what it was. Whatever it was big, and a lot of them. First thing in the morning, before it got light, but light enough to see, they made their way to where they had heard the noise coming from. They walked quickly and quietly until they came to the clearing. They looked at each other as they heard this noise behind them. They turned and waited for whatever it was to show itself. Oh, they did not have long to wait. When out of the jungle raced a herd of 7 large elephants. They were racing straight towards them. There was nothing they could do but stand very still and hope that the elephants would not kill them. They knew that the chances of living through the next few minutes were very slim, and they would all be killed as the elephants trod on them. Fergus told his two brothers to move slowly behind him and move towards the jungle as the largest elephant charged towards them. He told them he was sorry he'd got them into this mess and hoped that if they lived they would forgive him. He knew he was about to die. The elephant lifted his large trunk into the air and bellowed a terrible noise and started to run towards Fergus. There was nothing Fergus could do but just stand there, with his eyes closed, and in a calm and kindly voice said out aloud, "Please, elephant, stop." And do you know that the elephant stopped in its tracks? It was so close to Fergus that his trunk bumped into his chest. Fergus opened his eyes and prepared to be picked up in the trunk and then thrown to the ground and killed. All that happened next was very, very special. The big elephant, who was the leader of the group, moved his trunk from Fergus's chest and rested it very slowly and gently on his head. He blew down his trunk and ruffled Fergus's hair, which was now standing on end. Must blow me nose. Oh dear. Yes, Bo, I'm crying. Oh dear. He turned around and was pleased to see these two brothers had managed to make their way back into the jungle in safety. The other elephants all stood around the big elephant, looking at him and wondering maybe what was going on. The big elephant then took off his trunk from Fergus's head and, moving his head to the left, pointed to his back leg with his trunk. Fergus looked to where the elephant was pointing and started to laugh. Oh, and laugh he did. His brothers must have thought he'd gone mad. The elephant then lay down, and Fergus went up to the elephant's back leg and looked. Yes, there was a big scar where a nail had gone into it many years ago. The elephant then got up and lifted Fergus onto his back. At the same time made a very loud noise with his trunk. Two of the elephants walked up to the edge of the jungle and, reaching in with their trunks, picked up Milo and Noah and put them on their backs. The herd of elephants then turned around and started to walk back the way they had come towards the village. They all made noises with their trunks, and it was not long before they arrived back at the river. The noise had attracted all the villagers to the riverside, and when they saw the elephants, some of them started to scream and run away. It was only when Fergus, Milo and Noah started to shout out that they stopped. I could not believe their eyes. The elephants walked into the river and came right out next to the villagers. Each grabbed their passengers off their back and placed them very carefully on the ground. It was only then that the three brothers told the villagers what they had done all those years ago, and how they had removed a rusty old nail from a baby elephant's leg. Fergus pointed to the leg with a scar on it, and the elephant nodded his head from side to side. Fergus then told everybody what was causing the problem. You see, the herd of elephants were hungry and thirsty, and were coming down to the river at night to drink. Sometimes, without realizing it, they would unfortunately tread on a cow or a goat, but didn't mean to do it. As for the fish, the same reason was when they went to the river and laid down to wash, they would squash the fish. As for the crops, well, they was again them walking through the village at night, looking for food. Excuse me. Milo asked some of the villagers to go and get some bananas for the elephants to eat. People started to bring whatever food they had to give them. Even Milo's twin girls went up and stroked the wild elephants' trunks. A meeting was called for the next day, and all the villagers around that had damage to their crops, etc. People turned up, and at first were very scared to see 7 wild elephants being fed by the village children. But once Noah explained to them what was happening, they felt a lot happier. The outcome of the meeting was that every day the villagers and all the other villagers would put out food for the herd of elephants. Each day a different village, and after a while the elephants knew where to go for their food. You see, elephants never forget. People caught lots of fish. The cows and sheep grew big, and the crops in the field grew and fed everybody with so much left over they had enough to sell. People got to know about the extra food and the wild elephants, and would travel miles to come and see them. Oh, everybody was so happy. You see, if Fergus had not helped that elephant all those years ago, the herd would have killed him and his brothers that night in the jungle. The wild herd would have continued to kill the fish and animals and ruin the crops. Never forget that the good deed you do today could change yours and other people's lives in the future. People will never forget the kindness you do for them today, just like the leader of the herd of elephants remembered the kindness shown to him. Oh yes, I suppose you want to know what happened to the three brothers. Wow. Noah still fishes the rivers and now has two sons who are growing up well and love going fishing with their father. Milo, he washes every day, only because his two daughters make him. He makes a big fuss about it, but it's all a big joke, as he's not frightened of water now. Fergus, well, he never went back to the city. He told them he was not coming back, and now has a little animal hospital next to his new house he built. Oh, it's a big house. He needs it. As he fell in love with a wonderful girl who he knew when he was a child. They have 3 children, 2 dogs, 3 cats, a goat, a cow. Oh, and not forgetting, as if you would, 7 big elephants.